moms, dads out there, or maybe you're single right now and you've got the fairy tale wedding in your mind. How many of you lived out that fairy tale wedding? Anybody? Like you went through the planning and everything. In my junior year of high school in Lancaster, Texas, I had to do, I don't know why, but I had to do a marriage notebook. And if you give me a project, I'm going to do my best. Maybe not a writing project, maybe not even a math project, but if you give me a creative project, I'm going to go above and beyond. Always. I'm going to do the best. And so my marriage notebook was better than most of the girls in my class. Like we had to come up with the invitation. I did mine in calligraphy on my own. Like it was so sick. The tuxes, like it was the black tux with tails. Like it was so awesome as a junior in high school. My bride's dress, like it was the best thing that I could find in any magazine. My honeymoon was over the top. Like it was phenomenal. I got like 100 on that. And I think probably a lot of us, like we grow up and we've got this fairy tale of what it's going to be like. And I feel like more people spend more time on the wedding and the honeymoon than they do about the day in and the day out of really and truly living and doing life with that other person. And so today the challenge is, man, yes, have a great fairy tale of what you want. Man, shoot for the moon and whatever your parents' budget is, that's what you'll get, all right? But at the end of the day, man, always shoot for those high standards to have, even in your mate and who you want to date someday, who you want to marry someday. It's awesome. But that fairy tale wedding, man, that's on you and how you figure those things out and the finances and all that kind of stuff. I will say this, I think we had a phenomenal wedding. We got married at Hyde Park Baptist Church. Brooke's mom and dad went above and beyond on so many things, and it was a beautiful day. But that was one day in the life of marriage, right? Like that's one day. And even in a job sometimes, like you're early in that job and people talk about, well, you're still in your honeymoon phase. Well, even in your honeymoon phase, you're already learning how to live and breathe and do life with that person. I got to house sit for 6 months prior to us getting married. Okay, we were on a fast track for marriage. I don't know that everybody needs to be on a fast track, but it just worked out that way. Met Brooke on a volleyball court, and I was like, oh. And then 3 months later, I asked her to marry me, and her parents were like, what? Like 3 months later, asked her to marry me, and then literally in a year's time, we were married and on this thing. We were both babies, so probably in the scheme of things, we should have gotten married. I don't know, everybody says the babies shouldn't because they're always used to getting everything that they want. But man, there's so many dynamics that come into that. I always look at Brooke's mom and dad and think, man, they are like the couple. I want to be like them when we get older. They're just phenomenal. They do everything, all of the sacrifices that they have made for Brooke and her sister growing up and now with us to be here for the grandkids to come and watch. Those were all choices that they make. But inside of this, the relational side of things, early on, I'm pretty sure Brooke's mom wanted to kill me at times. Like, I'm pretty sure she was like, well, aren't you a smart aleck? Like, I'm pretty sure in that process, and maybe some of us, we've gone through those tough conversations at times. And maybe some of you, you're still trying to figure out your spouse. Maybe some of you are still trying to figure out, do I even want a spouse if you're not married yet? And I love it because this series, although some of you, maybe you're kind of tired of hearing about relationships and all of that kind of stuff, I think this series has helped us at least get to that place where we can say, man, the art of relationships is difficult at times. And so, what you need to know, kids, what you need to know, students, it's not about a ring, just getting the ring. And I think that was when I picked out the ring in my wedding notebook, like, I don't know what I was thinking, but it was like this huge carat, right? Huge carats on there. But Mariah Carey, she had a 35-carat diamond from a guy, and she never got married to him. Like, I don't know what that dude's doing, right? But Kim Kardashian, a 15-carat diamond from Kanye West, worth somewhere between $2 to $4 million. J-Lo was given a 15-carat ring worth over $1 million from Alex Rodriguez. Serena Williams had a 12-carat diamond ring worth over $2 million. Elizabeth Taylor, maybe some of you in the room can remember that. When she married Richard Burton, she got a 68-carat diamond ring. Some of the kids in the room are like, why would you put a carat on it? You can explain that to them. 68 carats. At that point in time, in 1969, it was worth $1.1 million. He was the third of 7 husbands. Imagine trying to follow him with a 68-carat diamond ring. Jennifer Aniston, 9-carat cushion cut worth over $1 million. Got it from someone that she's no longer married to. So here's the deal. It's not about a ring. It's not about getting the perfect situation for the wedding. And I'm fixing to do a wedding here coming up. Actually, 2 weddings here coming up. Eddie, wherever Eddie is in the room. Eddie's about to get married. We'll jump into that. So really take good notes today, Eddie. But inside of that, if you get lost in the stuff, then you might get lost in what marriage really and truly is. And it's the day-to-day, and it's the hard, and it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we've got to determine, we have to make it a determined purpose of our will to stick with it. So here's some misconceptions about single or about being married. One thinks the other one is better. Those who are married seem to try hard to be single again. Those who are single seem to try so hard to be married. But if God has called you to be one of those two, then be that until He changes that call in your life. Be the best you that you possibly can inside of your relationship with the Lord, so that when that person jumps in. I've got a great quote that I'll read here in just a little bit that talks about that. So kiddos, as we're talking today, on your side of this, to marry or to not to marry, all right? You can think about those things as I'm talking if you want to. What would be some good reasons to marry somebody? And then what are those reasons that you might think of, I don't need to get married because I can do this, 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 and this. And then down here, if you want to marry, what things would you like in your husband or your wife someday? Maybe those are things that you see in your mom or your dad. Maybe those are things that you've seen on your favorite TV show, which you might need to be careful on that. I don't know. But just think about these things today. And the cool thing is as we walk out today, this is your ticket to ice cream. I said that earlier. But don't just give it to them, just show it to them and then take it home. And maybe you can look at it later. If you don't have one of these parents, on the other side of here are notes. You can also jump in on our YouVersion app and follow along as well. But we're in 1 Corinthians, and we've been in this series for about 4 or 5 weeks now. And Paul is trying to help the Corinthians church to get their relationships intact and ready to do greater, better than what they have been doing. And so Paul takes us back to marriage and singleness with the text that we're in today. So point number 1, married, kiddos, married or single, all right? Either way, both have troubles of their own. Some of you, maybe you remember in your single life, I was an idiot in my single life, and Brooke got to inherit that early on in that I went and I bought, I leased a Toyota 4Runner as a student pastor that made not much money. And I thought, man, this will be something that will really impress her. And it didn't. And then she inherited the debt that came with leasing that vehicle. So even as a single, there may be some things that you do in your single life, if you jump into credit card debt and all of that kind of stuff, that once you get married, if you're not done with all of that debt, then you bring that into the marriage, right? Because two becoming one. I've heard of husbands and wives who have different banking accounts and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why you would do that, because to me, it's two that become one. And that's one in body, that's one in money, that's one in a house. Like all of that should come together to make one budget where we're all working together on that. But married or single, both have troubles of their own. Both should take great concern in whatever state they are in. That's what Paul is saying. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, look at verse 25. Now concerning the betrothed, those who are about to get married, those who have waited and waited to be married, I have no command from the Lord, but I give judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. I think that in view of the present distress, the crazy times that they were in those moments, The average lifespan for people during that time was about 35 years of age. So lots of crazy stuff that was happening back in those days. And so he's saying in the present distress, he's also probably talking about how crazy the church has already gotten inside of Corinth. It is good for a person to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be free. Are you free from a wife? Do not seek a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a betrothed woman marries, she has not sinned. Yet those who marry will have worldly troubles, and I would spare you that. So marriage will always bring concern. Two broken people coming into a relationship. Right? Two people who have struggles as single people, when they jump into a relationship, there's always going to be things that you're going to have to work through. There will always be those things. And if the Lord is number one in both of your lives, man, that is the best fix. That is the best gorilla glue on the planet is Jesus Christ, because he's the one that can hold you guys together. Marriage is hard work. Brooke and I said it earlier, we were both the babies. Brooke as a teacher, me in ministry. Our schedules at times are tough. And so when you think through all of those things about getting married, like you think about what you do, you think about what your future spouse is going to do, and you begin to think, how can we work those things together? Some of the graduation parties that we've gone to in this past couple of weekends are people that are in her sphere more than they're in my sphere. And then some of the ones that we went to are in my sphere of influence more than they were in hers. But together, we make a great party couple, and we get to sit in different parts of the room and talk to different people that are in there. But both of us worked hard at trying to love our kids the right way. Are we always great at it? No, we're not. We fail at times. But it always, if it's worth the time, then it has to be worth working through the tough stuff. Marriage is great work. I mentioned it earlier. We have two great daughters. Love them to death. Would do anything in the world for them. But man, as you work through that, when you come from two different places in your own lives, you may come in with two different ways on how to parent. You may come in with two different ways, and you've got to figure it out. Which way are we going to do it? We're going to do it your parents and how you grew up. You're going to do this. Is it a great blend? But all of that, if you will look at it through how the Lord would ask you to do that, is what's best. Marriage is not the only work. We both still have the call of God on our lives. We both still have the call of God on our lives. And so we have this relationship, and then we have this relationship, and then we have all of these relationships. And I've said it so many times in here that if this relationship is not all that it can be, then guess what? I'm usually stinking it up as a husband. If this relationship isn't great, then I'm usually stinking it up as a dad. If this relationship isn't all that it can be, then maybe I'm stinking it up with all of you guys. But this one is the most important. So all of it takes is hard work, determination, and a stick-to-itiveness that a lot of people, even people inside of churches, just when things get tough, they just fold their cards and they just walk away. Man, aren't you glad that Jesus didn't see the cross and then say, man, it's too hard. It's too much. I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that. I know that's the only way. I'm not going to do that. Jesus didn't do that, man. He went all the way to the cross. Point number 2, married or single, both must make the most of their time. You've got to make the most of your time. You've got to make the most while you're on this planet. Look what he's saying here in verse 29. This is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short. You see, Paul is sitting here and he's thinking that Jesus is coming back soon. Here we are all of these years later, and Jesus still hasn't come back, but we're closer today than obviously we were when Paul was talking. And so from now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none. He's not saying go and be fancy free and do all this stuff. He's saying, hey, pay close attention to the things that the Lord is asking you to do. And in your marriage, continue to do those things. Make time for those things. And those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as those they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. It's just saying at some point in time, Jesus is going to come back. It may not be in our lifetime. It may be well after that. It was obviously well after the time when Paul wrote this. But man, in our spiritual lives, we need to be in a place of readiness to do the ministry that God calls us to each and every day. And you can't use family, and you can't use job, and you can't use fill in the blank as your excuse to not do what God is calling you to do every day. There's no good excuses. There may be some great excuses, but there's no good excuse to not do what God's calling you to do. And so you have to look at that. But time is short from eternity's perspective. Who else made statements like what Paul just made? Jesus did. Here's what Jesus said in Matthew 24. Jesus warns us about this short amount of time in 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. He goes on in 34, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all of these things take place. 36, but concerning that day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. Verse 44, therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So Paul is just saying to all of those people, the ones who are single, the ones who are married, hey, be busy doing the work that God has called you to do. You're in your place where you work right now. You are there for a purpose. You're in Central Charger Volleyball for a purpose. You're at Keller High School for a purpose. You're at your school for a purpose. Kiddos, you're at your elementary school for a purpose. You're in your teacher's classroom come the fall again for a purpose and to figure out what that is. But then in Matthew 22 and verse 30, Jesus answers a question about marriage. And so maybe some of you today, this is good news. Maybe for some of you today, this is weird news. But he says this, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. It's just saying, hey, when we get to heaven, we're not going to be married. We're not going to have to, that extra work or job or whatever, that's not going to be something on us in heaven. I firmly believe that I will know Brooke in heaven and I will love Brooke in heaven just like I will love everybody else. But Jesus himself says, hey, in heaven, we're not going to be married. We're not going to be busy about that kind of work. There will be more things for us to do up there than that. Doesn't mean that we will no longer know each other. Doesn't mean that when we get to heaven that we are just completely removed from it. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying there won't be marriage in heaven. Point number 3 this morning, married or single, devotion to the Lord must supersede everything else. Man, I know a lot of you in here are athletes. A lot of you in here, man, you are very scholastic. A lot of you in here, you're teachers. You've got so many great things in front of you, but you can't let those things supersede your relationship with the Lord. Verse 32, I want you to be free from anxieties is what Paul is saying. Paul is coming at it from a perspective just saying, hey, I've seen this happen in a lot of situations. Married people have a lot of anxiety. So if you don't want to go through some of that, then maybe you would stay single and say, God, do whatever it is you want to do in my life. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things and how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. Paul is not saying in this that you can't be devoted to the Lord and devoted to your family and all that. Don't hear him say that at all. He's just saying that at times it does. Priorities happen, schedules happen, and at times we get those things out of whack. I'll go back to this. If I get this one out of whack, more times than not, these are. And so if you're sitting there right now and you're going, man, I agree with that, like following the Lord and trying to keep my family intact, it is a 24/7 job, and it is. It really, really is. The great work of keeping your family together, the great work of loving each other, it takes all of us. Things that married people worry about the most, anxiety comes in these forms. Pleasing your spouse at times, worrying what they think about you, helping your kids, all of that kind of stuff, money issues. Money issues are usually some of the biggest things. Here's just a great plug for this. We're doing Money Matters, a Ramsey Plus. We're going to start that the first week that we are in Byron Nelson, which is the 13th. And Lydia and Clay Stillman are going to teach that class at the 8:45 time slot there. And so if you right now, you're just sitting there going, man, I wish I was better with my finances. Next week, you'll hear a little piece of their story and what God did through them with their finances and stuff like that. But if you're here today and you're like, man, I really would like to figure out how can I get on track with my finances and do better than what I'm doing right now, and to do finances God's way, that's one way to be able to do that. And so, but that may be one of the things that you and your husband or you and your wife that you fight about the most or you worry about the most, and you're trying to figure out what's our game plan, where do we go from here. There are issues in regards to other relationships that we have on the planet, family responsibilities, like all of those are things that can easily get in the way and help muddy the water. Things that unmarried people worry about the most. Usually the anxiety comes in this, wanting to be married so badly that you would throw caution to the wind at times maybe and just settle for somebody else. Wanting a larger income, wanting a larger house, wanting the bigger things of life, and you're sitting there thinking that the only way that happens is if I get married. That's not necessarily the case. Here's the deal. Continue to follow the Lord. Continue to trust in the Lord, whether single or married. Here's that quote that I was talking about. To the singles in the room, be caught doing the Lord's work diligently, when and if He chooses to bless you with someone to jump into that work with you. If He doesn't send you someone to jump into that work with you, you are better doing that work alone. Does that make sense? Like if God's called you to do something, then He's probably got to raise this person up to that same level or even higher to encourage you in that work. Amen, Cooper. Amen. So some of you in the room, like you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, if I could just find somebody. Don't just find somebody. Find the right body. Find the right person that can see what God is doing in your life and come alongside of you and raise the bar in your life. If that person can't do that, then it may be that was one step in the process of God showing you that you were meant for better and meant for more than just what was happening right there. Paul just begs the point to keep an eternal perspective. If you're dating someone right now, if you're married to someone right now, if you're single and could care less about ever getting married, continue to keep an eternal perspective, because the things that we are supposed to focus on, really and truly, they aren't necessarily the things of this world. We're supposed to have a higher view of our lives and our priorities. Last one, married or single, both have lifelong commitments. If you're married, you made a lifelong, not an eternal, but a lifelong commitment to your spouse. When you said I do, God took that just as seriously, if not more than you did, if you were thinking about checking out, right? You made a lifelong commitment in that day. But if you are single, you still have, as a believer, you still have a lifelong commitment to Christ, to follow Him. If anyone thinks that he's not behaving properly toward his betrothed, if his passions are strong, it has to be, let him do as he wishes, let them marry. It is no sin. He's just going through this. So then he who marries his betrothed does well, and he who refrains from marriage will do even better. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. Yet in my judgment, she is happier. She remains as she is. And I think that I too have the Spirit of God. He's just saying that in his singleness, in what he's doing for the Lord, he is so content in what God has called him to do. So today, are you content inside of your singleness? Are you content inside of your marriage? My prayer is that the answer to both of those would be yes. Are you secure in who you are with or without your spouse inside the room? I dated a girl before Brooke, and her name was Stephanie, and I tried to get my mom to really like Stephanie and to want to be friends with her and all that kind of stuff. But the whole time, like, Stephanie could not be anywhere with my family without me. And my mom could not stand it. And so she would always try to pull her into another room just to have a conversation. She did not want to do it ever. She always had to be attached to me. And I remember having a very strong conversation with my mom, really more. My mom had a strong conversation with me, and she said, Ken, if you're going to do ministry, she is going to do you more harm than she is going to do good. Man, here was my mom, who I have loved her and I have adored her, respected her for all of these years. Man, when my mom said that to me, like, my heart just sank, because I was head over heels. I thought this was the one. I thought she was so cool. But in the moment that my mom said that, it was like the Lord turned on a light in my head that said, your mom's right. You're not going to go to the same places. I haven't called her to do and to be what I've called you to go, to be, and to do. Man, if I would have married her, she would have had to give up a call to missions. And she went to Kazakhstan for years. Like, I would have had to, one of us would have had to give up maybe on what God was calling us to do. And so, man, I just say this, when you have someone in your life who you love and you respect and you adore and who have been praying for you for years and who know you in and out and who believe the best about you, when those people speak into your life, like, you need to give great ear to that, because they have your greatest good in mind. It's all about those relationships. So those of you who are married in the room, like, who is it that you're investing your life and your marriage into? Maybe it's some young couples that need a great couple, a vision couple, to be able to look at their lives or whatever. Maybe there's two people that are getting married that didn't have what you had as before husband and wife. Maybe you can help them and point them in the right direction. Man, we all need help in this. You see, Paul isn't looking at this. He's not looking at it as good versus bad, marriage versus singleness. He's looking at it for each individual and saying it's about better versus best. And so here's the deal, man, if you are here today and you've been trying to figure out what God's call is in your life, keep asking him. Just like somebody said, hey, just pray about it. Pray about it. Out of the mouths of children, pray about it. The cool thing is that you can talk to God just like I'm talking to you right now. You can talk to him and you can lay it all on the line and say, God, would you please help me? Paul says both singleness and marriage, they're both gifts from God. Marriage is not a status symbol. Singleness is not a mark against you. Man, be content where you are. Steps to owning your identity and having a fulfilling status, make living for him your highest calling. And that way, whether you are married or single, you will help raise the bar in those people's lives, hopefully, and that they would be able to jump in with you and to follow God's call. These last few weeks, the last week in particular, whether I'm single or married, serve the Lord, serve others. How do I do that? Romans 1, be set apart. 1 Peter tells us to live as free people. Colossians says be compassionate, kind, humble, and patient. And then 1 Corinthians 7 would say, single or married, remember that you were bought with an incredible price. You were bought with such an incredible price that the price Jesus paid for you should only then in turn be shared with a life that also understands what kind of high price was paid for you. The Bible speaks often about being unequally yoked. And you want to marry somebody who believes like you do, who follows the Lord like you do, who worships like you do. Those things matter. And that's when it gets complicated, when you jump in and you're with someone who you know is not on the same level as you. There's that struggle to try to get them to that place, but more times than not, they pull you down more than you pull them up. So inside of this today, however it is that you feel, that great price that you paid, heads bowed and eyes closed this morning, just want to talk to you and kind of show you what a great price that has been paid for you. I don't know if you're like me, but when you go shopping, maybe you go straight through all of the fancy stuff, the new stuff, and you go and you find the clearance rack. Well, for me, I shop at Ross a lot, and so you would say probably that is all clearance, right? But if you go into Ross, you can go to the back section of the men's clothes, and there is a red tag on there, and it says clearance. That means you can get that shirt like the one I'm wearing today. You can get that shirt way cheaper than you could have earlier. And some of you, maybe you shop that way. You're on a tight budget or whatever. I just want you to know there was no tight budget. You were not a clearance item for the Lord. He paid the highest price that he could possibly pay to have a relationship with you. And because of that great price that he paid for you, he wants the best in life for you. And he wants you to live for him. He wants you to trust him. He wants what is best for you. God loves you that much that he would send Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. That's the price that he paid for you. And he paid that price for you so that you could live for him, you could trust in him, and you could follow him all the way for the rest of your life. You kiddos that were in here, man, it matters what you do with the Lord. If you want to get married someday, like it matters who you would marry. If you want to follow Jesus, man, it matters that you would come and that you would be in church and that you would find people who can help lead, guide, and direct you. But I want to tell you this. Jesus told his disciples, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. So if you're here today as a child, if you're here today as an adult, and you've never come to that place where you have placed all of your faith and all of your trust in Jesus Christ, and you have understood that he is our Savior, man, that next step may be in making him Lord. To come under submission and to make him the boss of your life. If you haven't done that before, man, Chuck is back there at our decision station. I love Chuck so much. And he would lovingly walk through. I've sat through connection time with him and had a blast with him. He would love to walk you through that time. Right back there on my right and your left. He would love to walk you through that. So if you're here today and you never place your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, what's keeping you from it? What would stop you from doing that? Today, I can't think of anything that is so pertinent in your life, anything that is so insurmountable that you could not stop today and ask Jesus Christ to come into your life. So today, Jesus, we love you. Jesus, we trust you. I say it a lot, if we can trust you for our eternity, then surely we can trust you for all of these relationships that you've placed in our tender care. And probably every one of us in here have something, someone maybe that we know that relationship isn't all that it could be or should be. God, would you help us all to figure out how we can be you with skin on to every one of those relationships, to help raise the bar in those people's lives, to help them see that life is so much better when we're in a relationship with you. Help us to live our lives so close to you that when people see our lives, they feel like they are missing out on something, that something would be you. So as we gear up in these next weeks to go back to Byron Nelson, God, I pray that you would not allow us to miss anything during this summertime, of people that we can invite to Kids Craze, people that we can invite to Flight Week, people that we could just have a conversation with and ask, man, how are things going? How can I help? Point them to the better things that are inside of a relationship with you. So we love you, Jesus. We trust you. Can't wait to see what you have next inside of our next series. Can't see what you have for us in this summertime and going back to Byron. We put all of our faith and all of our trust in you. Because you are so awesome. We love you, Jesus. It's in your name that we pray it all. Everybody said, amen.